I think already it was mentioned that whenever people ask me and they say, is there any hope in Pakistan? Is there any hope for Pakistan? And people like Mohsin Dawar come immediately to mind. And they come to mind because Mohsin Dawar represents that particular generation of political activists. He used to be a very active member of the civil society, but before he switched to formal politics. And not only that, they are making their voice heard, but are actually entering and making a difference in the political arena. In Pakistan, as was mentioned earlier, Pakistan's politics and military-dominated state, it is very difficult for people to organize the way Mohsen and his comrades are doing. It's a Herculean task, just to put it very simply. It's not easy. But Mohsen braves all these odds. In addition, he has also articulated the voice of the young Pashtuns everywhere in the country. Of course, now it's a national movement. It's not just limited to Pashtuns, but the Pashtuns who have been dislocated across Pakistan, all over the world due to a 2-3 decade long conflict in Afghanistan and its border, and where Pakistan state made extremely wrong choices. And today it not just the state but Pakistanis, and most importantly the people of Pakhtunkhwa are paying a heavy price, not just from the Taliban project that was created by the Pakistani state, and prior to that, the Mujahideen project, pushed by the military and the CIA and the Saudis and everyone under the sun, but also the heavy militarization, because Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and especially the tribal areas are world's, I think, one of the most militarized zones. We often talk of Kashmir and other parts of the world, and we often overlook how people in tribal areas, districts have been denied their freedom of movement, development. It remains one of the poorest regions in Pakistan and the world, where official rates of poverty are above 50 to 60%. Mohsen will tell us more. And the level of health, education, services remains abysmally poor, even compared to developed part, quote unquote, parts of Pakhtunkhwa. So there's this huge disparity of the way people have been treated there. And we are very glad that Mohsen is not only articulating their demands, their concerns, but is also speaking for all oppressed people within Pakistan, be it out within and outside Pakhtunkhwa. So with that, Mohsen, I think first, maybe you should tell us all, because everybody would be curious to know what is the current state, because what we hear in the news is the Taliban attacks, frequent attacks on state, on army, on police. What is not mentioned is what the people, because the reporting in the media is anti-people. It makes people these invisible numbers, digits. But what we hear more is that, this police post or this army checkpost or army officer. What is the situation of this current dynamic?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank all the guests who are here today in this event. And well, if we talk about the situation, the way militancy is encroaching and increasing day by day, I would like to connect it the way you mentioned it in your intro, that the Afghan policy of Pakistan state, which was, I believe, framed by CIA and supported by the Saudis, and where the state of Pakistan provided their services to be used as a rented army. And when they used their own people, their own territory, especially the people of Pakhtunkhwa, as cannon fodder for the war of the CIA. And from last 45 years, I think that the same policy still continues. And there has hardly been anything changed about it. The West, it still continues to use this entire region with for their own strategic interests, and for their strategic interests, starting from the Cold War, they have used this religious extremism as a as a detonator to destabilize the entire region and achieve their strategic interests. And I think the same thing is happening right now. The support which started to Mujahideen and then which shifted to Taliban, and then for a very brief time it turned against Taliban apparently. But then when after a thorough brainstorming, when Afghanistan became a republic and the democracy was growing, it was the time they realized that the regional powers, including Russia and China, are getting all the benefits from the stability, or at least the political structure which was brought in Afghanistan. And I think from that on, they decided to turn the things otherwise, and then they handed over Afghanistan to Taliban through Doha Agreement.
Yes.
And I believe that Doha Agreement is something from which this whole process started. And Pakistan, once again, it was the military, the intelligence agencies, they were a part of this, like the past, they were again a part of this strategic interest of the West. And they facilitated the entire process of handing over Afghanistan to Taliban. Starting from taking out Mullah Biradar from the prison and taking him to Doha for the talks, and back and forth the same process.
Yes.
It kept going on, and from which ended in Doha Agreement, and starting from the Doha Agreement, which kind of de-recognized the Republic of Afghanistan.
Yes.
Because a superpower like USA, which takes guarantees from a militant group, which were on the blacklist for a very long time. Some of their leaders, some of their central leaders, there was a bounty of almost about 10 million for a very long time. I don't know whether it still exists or not, because they are very good friends right now. But it kept going on, and it started from that. And then the prisoners of Taliban, they were taken out of the prisons in Afghanistan, which then, a kind of accelerated the takeover of Afghanistan by Taliban. Now, starting from that point, people like us who kept telling the general public in Pakistan, the political and the military elite of Pakistan, that this thing will end up in a disaster for Pakistan also.
Yes.
But when we used to raise this thing on the floor of the National Assembly, the then Speaker of the National Assembly of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, he used to stop and he used to straight away switch off my mic. So I was even not allowed to talk about what is happening. I was not even allowed to talk, because at that time the parliament was under the control of Colonel Saab. And then, he was the one who used to decide that who will have to speak today and who will not. So whenever I used to talk, I used to speak about this project Taliban, and then, I was not allowed to do so.
Yes.
So we kept raising our voice, and for the same reason, we didn't have any other disagreement with the state of Pakistan. The actual reason was the Afghan policy, the way they were treating Afghanistan. And then, as a byproduct of that Afghan policy, like the displacement of the people, the abduction of the people, the missing persons, and the destruction of the business centers of our people. So all these things are the byproduct of the one policy of the state. And for the only this agreement which we had with the military and the state of Pakistan, we were we were imprisoned. There were, I think, still more than 2 dozen terrorism cases against me, and we were and there
You were branded as a traitor.
we were branded as a traitor,
Yeah.
and there actually cases registered against us, under the 124A. So it kept going on. To sum it up, when we said that this takeover of Taliban will be a disaster for Pakistan.
Yes.
We said that at the time when it was officially celebrated in Pakistan.
Yes, I was there. Actually.
When the Prime Minister Imran Khan, he said that Afghanistan has
broken the chains of slavery. Shackles of slavery. Yes.
Of slavery. And I also said at the same time that, look, just imagine tomorrow Nur Wali Masood or any other leader of TTP approaching Islamabad, and he's taking over the entire country, and a president or a prime minister of any other country who issues the same statement and calling it breaking the shackles of slavery. So what will be the sentiment of the general Pakistani?
Yeah.
So and that's why there is across the board a general hatred amongst Afghans against the Pakistan, because it has been a state policy, the way it was treated. So followed by that incident, we predicted that now the same thing gonna come here, because the takeover it provided them a strength, it provided them a motivation, and followed by all these things, now we predicted that they will follow the same ideology in Pakhtunkhwa and other areas of Pakistan.
That's right.
And that's what is happening right now. But the problem which happened was that the entire process of bringing the militants to Pakhtunkhwa was also facilitated by the state of Pakistan. Because they were brought here under the umbrella of talks. And I was amongst one of the few who opposed
it consistently.
Consistently. Because in some of the meetings with the national security, I questioned the military command, because they were the one who were engaging in all these talks. And the civilian leadership, I'm sorry to say, but they were even not aware of what is happening, because once when I heard about a Jarka who went to talk with Taliban in Afghanistan, I discussed it with the then Prime Minister, Mr. Shahbaz Sharif, that this is disaster. Do you have any idea about what's happening? He didn't have any information that what's happening. But then a meeting of the National Security Committee was called, and in that meeting I questioned them, because they presented a 1.5 hour, they gave us a 1.5 hour presentation, and that presentation was, the crux of that presentation was that we don't have any other option other than talking to Taliban. So my question was that they want absolute power, and you are saying that they will have to surrender. So what's the point of agreement between you guys? So he didn't have any answer. So, but after that, we have seen that they're spreading all over the province, and more equipped, more strategic than the past, because the billions, the weapons, which were billions, were left by the US and NATO. It's now in their control, and they are now very effectively using against using here. But still, I believe that it's a kind of a very controlled project, and I think, being a political worker, my assessment is that there is a plan to hand over some areas of Pakhtunkhwa also, and might be to form another emirate. And it's happening with the consensus of the Pakistani state.
So they haven't learned anything, because this happened earlier also. They had given Swat, they had given other parts of Waziristan, North Waziristan, if I remember, when the TTP or the Taliban, they are the same actually, had control. So what is the game plan? Why would they hand over parts of the country to these extremists? I mean, is it to
Yes.
crush politics and parties like you?
Well, they have they might have some their own interests also, just like you said that they want to crush anyone who is doing politics, even in Afghanistan, with Afghan identity,
Right.
in anyone in Pakhtunkhwa and the rest of the country with their own national identities. So this is, their strategic interest to crush all these kind of ideologies. But if we talk on the larger scale, the powers who are supporting them and the powers whose scripts they have been obeying during since this country was created from 75 years ago. So I think for their strategic interest right now is that they want to contain the economic expansion of China at any cost.
Okay.
And for that purpose, they want the chaos and destruction in the entire region, and that is only possible, with the presence of militant ideologies and with the presence of the militant groups in control, with the formal control in these in these areas.
Old wine in new bottles, as they say. So, but anyway, tell us, given in this situation, what is your party planning to do? How is it trying to change the situation? It's a new party, so tell us, tell everyone about it as well.
In NDM is, I believe, and the leadership of NDM, the leadership associated with the NDM. I think we are the only one who has opposed this new proxy war from the very start.
Yes.
Because there were many nationalist forces who welcomed the Doha deal. There were many nationalist forces within Pakistan who welcomed the Doha deal. They didn't predict it that it will end up in a disaster in Pakhtunkhwa also. And NDM was the only one who categorically opposed the Doha deal, and we said that this is a kind of de-recognizing the Republic of Afghanistan. And followed by that, there has been efforts which are still going on to normalize Taliban.
Right.
And to create a perception that there is no other way out, and we have to accept it, and we have to submit. But NDM, I think, is we have, and some of the nationalist forces have, they have now softened their narrative against the Taliban.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, but some of the reason might be that if they take over, we might get some share also, or if at least for their protection.
Yeah.
But I think this is not a strategy. This is a surrender of ideology.
Yeah.
And normalizing someone who is crushing the identity of my nation. Normalizing someone who is pushing my generation towards darkness, who has banned the education of girls. And it started with banning the education, and then they started that there will be no voice of the woman, and then no picture of her. And same thing is happening in Pakhtunkhwa also. Then I have written to the national, the UN rapporteur on education also, that even just only in my constituency, we have seen 4 girls' schools blown up. So now what NDM is doing that we, we haven't, shown any flexibility in our narrative. So we are very categorically opposing all this, and we are highlighting that what is happening. And also along with that, I think, and that's why we are the we have been on the hit list because almost, as you mentioned, that I was attacked in the election campaign. So the first attack was from Taliban, and it was a coordinated effort from all the groups of Taliban. And I luckily survived that also, and luckily all of my friends, 2 got injured, but there wasn't any major casualty, because then the attack was so much well planned and so lethal that or people fought with them for almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
and I didn't went out for a campaign after that. But
Yeah.
still, because of this narrative, people voted for me,
Yes.
and we were winning with a very good margin. And then they started tampering the Form 45, and when we protested against it, we were shot. I got 2 bullet injuries. 4 of our friends got martyred on the spot. 15 got
Yeah,
injured.
injured.
And I would also like to add something that this tampering of Form 45, we were the only one who protected 2 days before the election.
Yeah.
Because I was getting information from the district administration that the military is planning their level best, and they are under very big pressure to stop you at any cost. So we then, sit together and we analyze that what could be the loopholes through which they can reckon the rig and defeat us. And we, kind of make, we prepared ourselves to counter these loopholes. But I still believe that the kind of representation I did on the floor of the house for 5 years, and the kind of the way we countered the state narrative for 5 years, and I think the way we dismantled their narrative in most of the national security meetings, because the problem with the Pakistani politicians is that they hardly care about the peripheries.
Yeah.
And all the issues related to the Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan, they just look into the eyes of the military, and they whatever comes out of them, they straight away believe on it and go with whatever they said. So the same was their approach to whatever was happening in Pakhtunkhwa also. And I used to be there because I was a member of the parliament. So then when I used to question and dismantle their narrative, they were very much
Angry.
that why is only one person dismantling the entire narrative. Because when we convince almost all the political parties for whatever we want to do, like when they said that we will go for a talk, I was a part of that meeting. Almost all the political parties, none of them opposed it. I was the one who questioned them, and they didn't have an answer for that. So they also realized that the other parties who otherwise didn't oppose what we said, they might have been now feeling that, look, he's saying right, you didn't answer what he said.
Yeah.
So because of all these things, I believe that I will be stopped at any cost. So then I started thinking that what can be, the way through which they can stop you. Then this thing came in my mind, because being a political worker, I have been through all this process. I have been, in polling process since my childhood, since my student life. So I thought that this Form 45 is always something which they can manipulate.
Yeah.
And they're gonna do it. And what the candidate can do after that, they will ask you to go to court, tribunal, and then wait for
it take years.
4 years. So I came on record, and it's still available on my Facebook, the Facebook of our party. When I said that they have tried almost every way, but they cannot contain the lead. The last thing they're going to do will be tempering the Form 45.
And that's what happened.
That's what happened then.
But that's what happened nationally, actually.
Yes, of course. It wasn't. If it would have been predicted by the other parties also, I think it might have put them on the back foot.
So before we open up for questions, because I'm sure there are many questions, tell us about the province and how the rule of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf (PTI). How is it? Is that conducive to people's needs? They're very popular there.
Well, we can talk on this. I believe that this popularity, so-called, is also very designed. In 2013, they were brought through rigging, through a very large-scale rigging, because most of our friends who were in many other parties, who contested at that time, they came to the tribunal with all the records and all the evidences, which showed that there were polling stations which have 120% voters turnout, and all of them were going in the favor of PTI. So, and the same happened in 2018 also. So most of the previous two elections, they were managed. This one, I agree, they had a popularity and they had, but again, this time when the rest of the country was managed, still because it was going to PTI, it wasn't nothing. The entire the process wasn't disrupted in Pakhtunkhwa, except a few constituencies. Except a few constituencies, because the result of the entire Punjab province was also changed to 445.
Last night.
But they didn't the same with the Khyber. That's why Maulana is now angry that if you can give something to PMLN in Punjab, why can't you give it to me? So this time the things it was, but again, when I believe that PTI should have been contested and they should have been given all the opportunity and all the freedom and the symbol and everything. At the same time, the same contradictions again happen. They were stopped from all kind of activities in Punjab, but they were allowed to do everything in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and they were going out in rallies. And in many cases, we have seen that in some constituencies, where the candidate of the PTI was dragging behind, what they did was they arrested him and they put him in jail. And then after 5-6 days, he came out
as a hero
with more popularity. So all these things were, and when we used to talk amongst our friend circles of different political parties, my opinion was the same, that this province will again go to the way they are maneuvering things, the way they are letting PTI build a narrative, and the way they are letting them do their networking, and the way the environment is created to which can lead them to a victory. Right. And that's what then happened also. One of the reasons for this might be that it doesn't matter how much control the federal government is, they still want someone as a backup option to control it in the future. So Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is a province which can be used, which they have used in the past also, to keep the federal government under the control and tabedar to the military. And that's what is happening right now also. Whenever it is needed, PTI will present their services, and they will be brought to Islamabad to do whatever they want from them.
They will kiss and make up, as they say. Okay. So anyway, Mohsin, before I just have another question that I wanted to ask you, is about the overwhelming percentage of Pakistani population is young people below the age of 30. The median age also in Pakhtunkhwa is 23, 22. That's the average age of a Pakistani. Many follow your party. Others participate in PTM rallies, the nationalist Pakhtun nationalist idea. But many of them are also, in fact, big number follow the PTI. And if you talk to them or hear what they write on social media or the way they speak, it seems that they have imbibed the Pakistan Studies textbook. Okay, so there's this whole fiction of Pakistani nationalism and all the ideas. So what has been going on in these past 2 decades, that is, because obviously PTI is not coming from a vacuum. I mean, yes, the state supported it, but there was a society being created by the state. So tell us a little more on how can that be handled in going forward,
Well, I think if we talk about PTI and the general public perception and the mindset of the segment of the society which you have mentioned, I think they have invested a lot in it. Because few days ago we were talking to about the same issues, that how the military went on back foot when the Charter of Democracy was signed, and then when the Musharraf was forced
to quit.
to force
Yeah.
initially
Yeah.
to conduct elections, and then he was forced to quit. But I think he was the first living dictator, who was stood in uniform.
Yeah.
And it all happened because of the evolved democratic consensus
Yes.
of the previous two political
Leaders.
parties, who have been involved the same way, in the way right now what is happening. And after that, I think they realized that from these two political parties, we cannot achieve all what we want. And from that on, I think that onward, they started working on making a third force. And the third force is they tried to make out of that segment of the society which remained apolitical throughout the past, who are mostly influenced by the Pakistan study textbooks and who are also influenced by the media campaign. And it was another tool of social media was also added with it. So all these things it added, and then it resulted in the forming PTI. So, but then when things went wrong, the same thing it backfired. Right now, the problem is that, and I said that in my speech almost 4 years ago in Lahore High Court Bar Association, and in that speech I said because at that time PMLN was on the receiving end, PTI was partner with the oppressors, and I said in my speech that whoever, I said that the sentiments can be seen in this hall also. Because when I was called, I got a very overwhelming reception from the lawyers community. And I said the same is the situation of the general public in Punjab also. And whoever tries to go other way, I think he will become irrelevant in the society, in the general public, politically. And at that time, PTI was going down. There was a stage, when there was a point when nobody was taking their ticket for local government elections in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. But then things turned, and when we were also involved in the regime change, and when Shahbaz Sharif was becoming the prime minister, in one of the meetings I told him that politically, not in terms of numbers, but politically, you are one of the strongest prime ministers of the Pakistani parliamentary history, because almost all the political forces are supporting you. The Baloch nationalists, they are supporting you. The Pashtun nationalists, they are with you. The religious parties, they are supporting you. And People's Party is supporting you. And you also have, a significant presence in Punjab. But, if there are some strong and bold political decisions, which otherwise a civilian government cannot take, I think it's the high time
you should take
it. But if we don't do, I think I told him that you will become irrelevant the same way, and at that time, PTI, they started building a narrative, because anti-army narrative is very much popular right now in Pakistan. And with the capacity and the
outreach of PTI,
they very effectively used it. Right now, the problem in the Pakistan is that people like us, we have limited resources. Whatever we do, it reaches to a very small segment of the society. We are still trying to, or level best, to reach to everybody. But again, we didn't have that much of the resources. The way things were invested on PTI, and the kind of diaspora support they have, and the kind of
you also have support of diaspora.
Yes, of course. Of course. But I think
ये भी डायस्पोरा है।
Yes,
वो जो
बिल्कुल,
कहते हैं ना
वो-
ओवरसीज पाकिस्तानी सिर्फ
Yes.
उनके
So, but ये तो देखे ना, ये तो I'm happy to have. It's an honor for me to have some brilliant minds of the diaspora in this house today. You know,
बिल्कुल
like diaspora में भी ऐसे सब लोग होते हैं। तो वो उसकी वजह से उनकी जो आवाज होती है इट इकोस
बिल्कुल
और वो मतलब
हजार गुना
ये
वो एम्प्लीफाई होती है।
प्रॉब्लम ये है अब तक कि उनका काउंटर नैरेटिव अभी जो है वो बड़ी महदूद पैमाने पे है और जो नेशनल स्क्रीन पे है वो मतलब नैरेटिव है ही नहीं,
वो है ही नहीं, बिल्कुल
वो नैरेटिव है ही नहीं। सो इसको देखे ना, जिस तरह हम बात करते थे कि अफगानिस्तान में तालिबान क्या एंजॉय करते हैं, they're enjoying a free, क्योंकि वो there is no alternative, there is no one opposing
or challenging them,
and the same one is here, PTI is the only one in the mainstream politics who have
making the narrative,
although I think this narrative is still very much cosmetic, and their disagreement with the Pakistani army is only up to the extent that दस्ते शफकत हमारे हाथ से फूट आया, तो वो नाराजगी जब भी खत्म हो जाए तो वो मेरे ख्याल में वो जो क्या कहते हैं, कौन सा माशूक कहते हैं जो जुल्म जबर,
बिल्कुल
वो जब वो मतलब
लवर्स क्वारल,
वो उनके साथ अगर वापस ताल्लुक बहाल हो जाए तो मेरे ख्याल में उन्हीं के लिए they will again behave like a more oppressive tool for them, the way they did in the past. We were attacked, 15 of our friends got martyred and more than 70 were injured.
PTM was suppressed. They were not allowed to move anywhere.
In the Khyber incident, and they were the one who were, instead of being guilty or instead of making those killers accountable, they were a kind of justifying it, and they were a kind of maligning us to be killed.
Bilkul.
And it was a time when they hired special attorneys for prosecuting us.
Bilkul.
And special funds through the provincial cabinet. And the same happened in the case of Golai
and the family.
In her parents' case, they hired some some special prosecutors, and they approved some special funds to hire some
top lawyers,
high profile lawyers, in the in her case.